Oops.
Yeah, music that
Sorry.
I would like.
I thought you were already on vacation, Mike. Sorry about that. Welcome to another episode of Head in the Clouds from I Say Go Cloud Careers. My name is Chris Johnson. I am the Chief Operating Officer, and I just lost my Chief Marketing Officer. There he is. Okay, he's back. See, he was already off to Jamaica with that. Okay, so so again, I am Chris Johnson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, joined by Mike's down there. Mike, our founder and CEO, and Alonzo Coleman, our Chief Marketing Officer. Welcome, 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 everybody. We are excited to be here. So I want to make sure that everybody votes in this poll that we put up. I got something to talk about, and I want to know your thoughts. So if you have ever been offered advice by someone without asking what your goal is, let me know. Has anyone ever given you advice without knowing your goal? Yes or no? Simple question. Let me know your thoughts. So anyway, we're here to talk about a lot of exciting things. But before we get into this, I'm going to let Mike give us a quick intro, quick rundown, then let Alonzo say a few words, and then of course, I always got a few things to remind you about, and I might have a rant or two. Who knows? So, Mike, what's going on?
Tonight, we're going to talk about the cloud architect career and to some degree, the enterprise architect career, which are the careers that I think are the absolute best in today's world. Now, I've been a cloud architect, an enterprise architect, a network architect, a business architect. If there's an architecture role, I've done it, and I absolutely love them. And here's the key. When we talk about your tech career focus, we first have to figure out what job you actually want. And what most people try to do is they try to do the job they want, as opposed to the job their manager wants or their client wants. And imagine if you went to a doctor because you had a sore throat, and they ran in the room and they told you about the newest shoes that you could wear and how cool they are. Would you go back to that doctor? No. And when we have a lot of cloud engineers that become cloud architects, they love the tech so much, they cling to it like it's the most critical thing. And in the end, they think they're going to be a great cloud architect, and they become a horrible cloud architect, and they're a great cloud engineer. And the key is you have to do what you love. But if your job is to be a digital transformation architect and you want to code and configure technology, you're not doing any digital transformation anymore. You're not assisting your client at all. And here's the reason. There's a lot of tremendously wonderful and talented developers, cloud engineers, DevOps engineers. They're amazing people, but that's their job. And if you go to a doctor and they start talking to you about washing your car, you're going to laugh. And the reality is, so many people that come from a tech background cling to their old background when they try to get a new job. And in the end is, they don't get promoted. They don't get paid more. Their career stagnates, and they wonder why. And what do? More of the same. Let me get 15 more certifications. I'm not going anywhere in my career. But if your manager wants you to be a transformation specialist and a business leader, and you start doing a bunch of tech certifications, your cloud architect career is over. And people don't even realize it yet. This week I had somebody that got a $404,000 cloud architect job. Maybe it was last week. I can't remember. And this person was deeply prepared to be a world-class architect, and that's why they received it. And I want you all to know the difference between a cloud engineer versus a cloud architect. And, what a trusted advisor is, because, you really need to be trusted advisor training if you're going to work in any of these consulting roles. So we'll talk about what does a cloud architect do, what does a cloud architect do, and I'm going to get a little bit into enterprise architecture and TOGAF, not like crazy. But when we talk about these things and what the CIOs actually want and what your manager wants, I'm going to give you the secret to getting promoted. Make your manager happy. You want a happy life? Make your wife happy if you're a guy. I can tell you that right now. My wife's happy, I'm happy. My wife's unhappy. So, I have friends that think they're going to go do whatever they want and not ask their wife what they think. And that's about as great as being an architect and focusing on the tech and not the transformation. Promise you both will not be successful. If your wife doesn't like blue cats and you buy 50 of them, guess what? I promise you, It's not going to be a pleasant evening, week, month, or even year. Now, those 50 blue cats might be happy, but you get to the point. Alonzo, why don't you say something before we actually get into the discussion?
Yeah, I totally agree. There's been a lot of, and we'll just touch on this later, but there's a lot of emphasis on certifications. And okay, so if you get an AWS certification with 98% of clouds utilizing multi-cloud and they don't have AWS, where does that leave you? Where does that leave you in your competency, your ability to get a job, and so forth? So we can easily dive into this, but I'm going to reel myself in and just showcase that we're always glad to answer these questions, talk about the true career and the requirements needed to become a successful and competent cloud architect. So I want to give this back over to Mike. He's got a lot of information, but we're going to be collectively sharing our thoughts and rants and everything else in between about what's important and what's not. You're on mute, my man, Chris.
Hold on. You can't give it away to Mike just yet. All right. So normally I got things to tell people about, but this time I got things to tell people about and I got something to go off on about. So make sure you vote in the poll to let me know if anybody's ever given you advice without asking what you vote. So let me know. While I'm waiting on those people to vote in the poll, I want to make sure everybody knows about our free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job Guide. Completely free document, free e-guide, ebook, whatever you want to call it, download, whatever. It's free and it's to help you. If you want to know how to get your first cloud architect job, this is a great starting point. It's a free resource for you. Tyrone's got the link in the chat box, and we've also got the link there in our description as well. So make sure you get that free guide. It's an adaptation of our free How to Become the Ultimate Cloud Architect webinar. So if you want to join our webinar that we do every week, you can get that free e-guide and come prepared with some questions. So that free resource is there for you. Also, I want to make sure that everybody is aware of the free Why Tech Skills Are Not Enough guide. So, we're talking about the cloud architect today. So definitely tech skills are not enough for the cloud architect role. So, but for most tech roles these days, tech skills are not going to be enough to set yourself apart. Maybe 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, maybe in the Stone Age when Mike was starting out, I mean, in the 90s, when Mike was starting out, maybe truly the tech skills were enough to set you apart. That's what set you apart. But now the tech is so good. For the most part, the tech works. So how do you set yourself apart? Get the free guide to figure that out. Tyrone's got that link in the chat box as well. Link is in the description. We've got other free resources for you in the description. I'm just not going to ask Tyrone to put them all here in the chat box. I don't want to overwhelm you. But if you're interested, you can find them. We've got an interview guide. We've got a How to Get Your First Tech Job Guide. Maybe it's not a cloud architect. Maybe you just want to get into a tech career from a seemingly unrelated career. You can find all these free resources in our description. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, I just want to talk about something that's directly tied to what we're going to be talking about today. Today, we're going to be talking about the cloud architect role. What does the cloud architect do? What do you need to know as a cloud architect? What do you need to focus on as a cloud architect? What do you need to learn to be a cloud architect? We're going to be talking about all of those things. So let me talk about something that's really got me a little feisty. And if you know me, you'll understand. So our whole purpose for existence here at Go Cloud Careers is to help people reach their dreams faster, more efficiently. Period. Reach your dreams. That's our whole goal. So the only way we can do that is to know what your goals are and to know what your dreams are. So what really chaps my rear, I guess is the nice way to put it, since I can't say it the way that my grandfather and father used to tell me when I was acting up as a kid. What really chaps me is when someone offers advice without even knowing what it is that you want to do. And it appears that 82% of you have encountered that. That's not surprising. Most people, and it's directly tied to what Mike was talking about people that work that majority of people that are out there working are trying to sell their thing and not solve a problem, not solve the customer's problem. So people that are offering advice to you without any regard to what your goals are or what your desires are not there to help you. Maybe tangentially, maybe third, fourth, fifth tier down the connection, yes, it'll help you. But the primary purpose is to help them. And it just really upsets me. And it upsets me especially when people in positions of power and positions of influence in an industry or in a field do this. You know, and you tag on top of this people in a position of influence that go out and purposely conflate cloud with AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform or Oracle. You know, I see advice all the time about, do you want to become a cloud / AWS whatever? Do these things. And inevitably it's get this certification, follow it up with this certification, and then go do this crazy thing, and then this crazy thing. And it's not even asked anybody what they want. The first thing should be, what do you want to do? What is your goal? Okay, now we figured out your goal. If your goal is X, you need to go do this. But at the starting point is conflating cloud, an entire area, with a single vendor. That's like conflating, do you want to be a bank / Wells Fargo teller? No, you want to be a bank teller. You don't want to be a Wells Fargo teller. You want to be a bank teller. But anyway, I wanted to talk about these because it's out there everywhere. And I'm sure if you're on LinkedIn, and I'm sure if you're on Facebook, I'm sure if you're on YouTube, you see it. And I part of our mission here, if you followed us long enough, is to put up big flashing neon signs that say, hold on, everybody, hold on. We've put out countless videos and answered countless questions from people about how to find the right information. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk about that for a second because it's something that happens. And the unfortunate thing is that it's happening. And if you're new, if you're trying to figure this area out, you may not realize that it's not correct. Mm. And that's where we see it all the time. And that's why we do every single thing that we do. That's why we do Q&As every week. That's why we do webinars every week. That's why we do this Head in the Cloud show every week. Yeah, we come here, we have fun, we unwind, but we also come here to try and clear things up. And so I just end it with, cloud is not AWS. Cloud is not Azure. Cloud is not Google. Cloud is not Oracle. Cloud is cloud.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Chris. And I know you shared that really passionately. But you know what, Mike? I really would like for you to clear the air about what a cloud architect actually does. You've done it, you've lived it, and you teach it. Share that with the audience.
Absolutely. So I'm going to tell you what we do, but first I'm going to tell you what the customer wants you to do. So here's really great news. There's an article from CIO Magazine. Somebody from my team shared it. So here's the thing. Every organization has a chief executive officer like me who sets the strategy for the organization. These are the things that we want to achieve. We want to do X, Y, Z. They typically have a chief operations officer, which figures out a way to get it done. And they have a chief information officer who figures out what type of IT is necessary to execute the CEO's vision. So the CIO is your boss. I'm going to say it again. The CIO is your boss. Just like my wife is my boss, the CIO is your boss. My wife gets unhappy, you got an unhappy Mike. Trust me, it's not an experience I ever want to live. Your manager gets unhappy, you don't get promoted, you get fired. Or you get laid off at the next time corporate earnings aren't good and they're looking to lay off people, you're the first to go. So here's the good news. I can tell you exactly what the chief information officer wants. Gartner asked CIOs, what do you want? And they said, we would like someone that's a cloud architect that can develop and coordinate a cloud architecture. We'll talk about what goes into that in a minute. Someone that can lead the cultural change for adoption, and someone that can develop a cloud strategy and coordinate the adoption process. So what goes into this? Leading the cultural change for cloud adoption. Wow. That doesn't sound like much, but it's a huge job, and it's 50% of our job. That means you walk into a customer as an architect. You find the CEO and their goals, the CIO and their goals, the accounting department's goals, the finance department's goals, the marketing department's goals. You find out everybody's goals. When you have their goals, then the next thing you have to do is figure out how the business works, right? Because you're going to change the business with technology. Anybody that doesn't believe me that technology changes business, go walk into the grocery store and see that they know how it operates now without the cashiers, for example. Or walk into, and I won't go there, I refuse to go to one of Amazon's stores where they have no cashiers, because I don't go to places that replaced humans with pure technology. I just don't support those businesses. But walk in there. There's nobody to take your money. There's nobody to do this. The technology changes the business. So first, you need to understand how the current business architecture works. How is it operating today? From the strategy people, then you need to figure out, what do they want to do? What's that gap in between the two? Because there's always going to be a gap. Now, you got to start evaluating what kind of technologies do we have access to? How can the technologies be used to improve the company's business? Remember, the business drives the architecture. The tail doesn't wag the dog. The dog wags the tail. So we can't start with the tech. We have to start with the business. So now we've got the business goals, the business drivers, how the business operates, how we'd like the business to operate, and now we can start thinking about technology solutions that'll do it. Now here's the key. Now we've got technologies, some cloud, some non-cloud, some Internet of Things, some artificial intelligence, some blockchain, some network, some security. All of this stuff gets put together into an architecture. It's a blueprint for the change. So to lead the cultural change adoption, now I come in there with some kind of cool technology strategy. It changes the way the business operates. My chief operating officer now has to do business differently. So if I come in there and say, Chris, I got some new tech and it's going to change everything that you do, first thing he's going to say is, no, Mike.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'd be like, no, I'm buzzing you, Mike. No new tech.
And he has to do that because I can't break the business without understanding things. So now I got to lead the cultural change. I got to sell, not as a CEO, but to some degree as a CEO, but as a lot as an architect. I got to convince Chris that this is a good idea. Now at the same time while I'm at it, I got a chief marketing officer who has now marketing processes, right? I got to convince Alonzo it's a good idea. Now I got to convince the chief information officer who's comfortable with their current technology. Here, I got some new tech for you, which they may be paranoid about. And now I got to show them that this new tech, like a virtual machine, is the same silly tech they've been working with for 20 years once you strip away the silly AWS branding names like EC2. So that's leading the cultural change for cloud adoption, finding out what everybody needs, going to all key stakeholders, finding their business needs, their business goals, their business pain points, and showing them how the technology solution that we crafted can solve those problems, leading the cultural change of cloud adoption. Now developing coordinated cloud architecture. Okay, so you saw how I found out from the organization's key stakeholders and leadership what the business does. Now, artificial intelligence exists. I'm a cloud architect. I'm going to be putting artificial intelligence probably everywhere. It's going to help every organization be more operationally efficient. Organizations that adopt artificial intelligence will probably thrive, at least the first movers. Organizations that are slow to adopt it will probably die and get eaten and swallowed by their competition. Now, I don't need to be an AI expert. There's plenty of AI experts out there. I need as an architect to focus on how this new technology can be leveraged. Can it help an airline make better predictions, for example, to purchase fuel contracts at a lower price? Can it help a bank determine when to buy and sell a stock at a cheaper price in trading and help them be more profitable? Can it help an organization's marketing department write 10,000 blogs a day and be everywhere and get free content marketing? The key is, how does it help? So once I find all these key people, now an architecture is not just some silly cloud thing. It's everything. It's security, which means I'm going to be dealing with security vendors. Nobody's going to be serious. No serious organization is going to try and secure their systems with a cloud native firewall. It's not close to good enough. It's not adaptive in nature. So that means vendor management, Checkpoint, Fortinet, Palo Alto, Cisco, big players. What about load balancers? I'm probably going to need more features and functionality that I can get from any cloud-based load balancer. Now I got to deal with F5. Now I got this DNS environment for multi-cloud. I can't use AWS's Route 53. It's not that it's not good, it's great. But when the AWS cloud goes down and I'm relying upon AWS DNS, who's going to shift the traffic to Azure, my OpenStack cloud, or to the Google cloud? Nobody. So now I got to think about coordinating these things. Now, somebody's got to build this stuff, right? So that's going to be a team of cloud engineers and DevOps engineers, and I need their input to make sure they can actually build the thing, that I didn't dream up something that's not even possible, that couldn't be built by a team of 10,000 people in 2,000 years. Believe me, I've dreamed up some crazy architectures like that, and that's why you always do it. But I mean, I never presented them to customers. So the architecture is getting all the stakeholders, finding the security people that are going to help you design it, finding the networking people, finding the data scientists, finding the operations people. By the time you're done, I work on architecture teams, which is 50 people. Developing and coordinating the architecture is managing those people and leading them. So what have we covered so far in skills required? CXO relevancy, right, to go to the executives. Leadership skills. We talked about selling a vision, right? So that's sales skills. Soft skills are needed for all of this stuff. Emotional intelligence is needed for all of these things. Now, finally, the strategy. Are we one cloud? Nobody does that anymore. 10 years ago, maybe, but now 98% of organizations are multi-cloud. So how do we do it? Do we design it ourselves and hire a company like Accenture and Deloitte to deploy it for us? Do we have the resources? Do we outsource the design, the implementation to IBM strategic outsourcing, for example, so we don't have to worry about the people? How many years is it going to take to coordinate the adoption process? Can we do it all as a big bang deployment and change it all overnight? Or do we need architecture iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3 to make incremental changes? You can't necessarily, if it's a small business of 2 people, you can change it all overnight, no big deal. What about a business with 200,000 employees? You can't do that overnight. These things, architectural changes, can take years to change. And they may need to be step 1, step 2, step 3. So I like to say an architect designs, presents, and sells. Because that's really what we're doing. We're designing systems, we're presenting them, and we're selling them. But that design is all business. Now, develop a cloud architecture design, that's technical. Leading the cultural change for cloud adoption, that's not technical at all. And developing a strategy and coordinating the adoption process, that's all business. 2 out of those things aren't tech. And guess what? None of those are covered in an AWS Certified Solutions Architect Professional. 0. None of them. And none of them, 0 are covered in the CCIE. 0 are covered in the Azure Solutions Architect Expert. 0 of these things are covered in the Google Professional Cloud Architect because they are engineering certifications, not architecture certifications. So that is the architect. What do we do? You can think of design, present, and sell, but really, we're all about digital transformation, helping our customers adopt technologies that improve their business and not touching the technologies. Now, I want you to think about this before we go to the next thing. Would you really want your airplane pilot that's flying the plane handing out drinks and keeping people in their seats while they're at it and telling jokes in the back, or do you want to fly in that airplane? I want my airplane pilots flying the airplane. The second a cloud architect thinks they can touch the technology, they are no longer an architect. They are now focused on the technology. They are no longer focused on the cultural change. They are no longer focused on the adoption process. They are no longer focused on digital transformation. They are an engineer. And before we go to the next thing, it is okay if you love being an engineer. It's wonderful if you love being an engineer, and it's fine to stay as an engineer. I know people that love being nurses too. It's a great job. But when somebody goes from a nurse to a doctor, they can no longer work as a nurse. They have to do different things. If they're doing nursing, they're not diagnosing and treating their patients. They're carrying out the doctor's orders, but they are the doctor. Can't fly the airplane and keep the patients in their seats at the same time. Same thing for the end architect. The second they go from engineer to architect, and this is the toughest lesson to learn, you now became like a painter that had a painting business that now manages 10 people. You can no longer afford to paint. You need to go check on each painter that each person's house or business and make sure they're doing a good job. Manage the customer relationships and bid on clients to get your next work, to make sure that your 10 employees or 15 employees or 50 employees or 5,000 employees still have a job to do. Because if you're busy painting as a painting business owner, you're no longer finding jobs. And when those jobs are over, your people become unemployed. So we have to make that decision. Now, if you become an engineer, and I see a lot of engineers become architects and then go back to becoming engineers again because they really just wanted to be engineers. And that's fine. But we have to let go of our past in order to be successful of our future. Go to the next.
All right, I got it. So I gotta follow up to that, but I want to remind everybody, you can put questions there in the chat box. We're going to be taking questions periodically throughout the show. So make sure to put any questions that you might have in there. So you said something towards the end there, Mike. You started talking about the tech, and how you can't. I can't remember exactly how you said it, but anyway. So the question that came to mind was, why is architecture not about the tech? Like, let's talk specifically about that. Like, you did a great job talking about what the cloud architect does. So but why is it not about the tech? Why? So, like, what does that mean? I know we talk about that a lot.
Okay, so let's say you got an engineer that builds this iPhone, which has a beautiful picture of my cat Cindy on it, by the way. So right now you got a piece of technology. The engineer is focused on making this phone work. And believe me, I love my iPhone. And if we didn't have super smart engineers, this phone would not work. I don't care how the phone works. I'm an architect. Well, actually, I do care if I'm going to design it, but I'm a CEO right now. I care that this enables me to call my wife when she's in Philadelphia because I miss her. I care that this enables me to take photos of my cat Cindy because I love my cat Cindy. I've got 3 photos of me in the last 25 years and 3,000 photos of my cat Cindy in the last 2. I care that this enables me to speak to Chow today, who was arguing with Cisco about a firewall that they still haven't resolved an issue to yet. But I was able to call Chow. She was able to do it. She was able to message me while she was on the phone with Cisco. And not only is Chow a rock star, but I was able to help her give her guidance, for example. I also care that I was able to interact with numerous clients that sent messages today, and I was able to answer their questions. Additionally, I was able to speak with my publicist today over my iPhone. I was also able to review some documents that were out there. I was able to post on LinkedIn a message and respond to people's comments. This is what the phone does for me. When I go on my vacation, and I live near Palm Beach, but I'll go to Palm Beach because I don't have to jump on an airplane that way, and I can bring my cat Cindy. She doesn't like to fly. And we're in Palm Beach. I can check on my business. My brother who's in Philadelphia, I can still talk to him. I don't have to worry about things burning down because if they are, Chris will text me, hey, Mike, I need you to jump on the call. This phone enables me freedom. And when I go to my house in Greece, guess what? I can still call Chris and Alonzo and make sure things are good. When I go to my house in New Jersey, I can still make sure things are good. And that's really the key. This phone enables me to run my business on the go. So I might pay $1,500 for this thing, $2,000, $10,000, I don't care. Now, while we're at it, let's talk about this. Let's pretend for a second. Right now, my phone is $1,500. That's about what it costs to buy it. Something like that. I don't know. I don't really worry about what things cost. I just buy what I like. But that's neither here nor there. Any of you guys that become cloud architects or enterprise architects, you'll all be in that same position. As long as you don't focus on the tech, you'll focus on the transformation. Money will just be a tool to you. It doesn't rule you. It enables you to get what you want and take care of your friends and help others. It's a tool. This phone is a tool. Right now, this phone's $1,500. No. If it had Andy Jassy's phone number on it, and it had John Chambers' phone number on it, and it had Elon Musk's phone number on it, and it had Sandy Natella over at Microsoft's phone number, is this a $1,500 phone, or is this now worth $100,000? Or $1 million?
I was about to say, I think you undervalued that phone with 100,000.
I did. But it's the point. It's the value that this phone derives that is the value for the business. An architect knows how to sell this phone and how to integrate the things on the phone that are going to improve the customer's business. They can say, well, Mike, what do you do? How do you change your life? You go to physical therapy these hours. Okay, you still need to be reachable. You go to Greece a lot. How can we get you connected? You spend all these hours on video. You're obsessed with taking photos of your cat. I don't care, whatever it is, but they can find what they need and they can recommend the products for me, the software packages for me. That's what the architect's doing. At the same time, the architect needs to convince my wife for all the things that I need to buy because she's the official money manager, so to speak. She's the chief financial officer of our home. But whatever, the architect has to do that. Now, by comparison, if somebody told me how I'm now the purchaser, if they told me how the code works on this phone, I'd have an instant headache, fall asleep, and run out of there. I don't care. And no business cares how the technology works, except for the engineers that build it. They care what can the tech do for them. So as the architect, you're in between the techies that actually make the stuff work and the business executives that actually want to improve their business. That's why architecture is not a techie job, it's a business job. Enterprise architecture is 80+% tech, sometimes 100%. Cloud architecture is 50 to 80% business and 20 to 50% tech. Those people that earn the most, those people that get these kinds of salaries like this, or these kinds of salaries like this, which is about, or these, or people that are working in the business world with these kinds of salaries, these are people that are focused on leveraging the technology to improve business performance. You give me a software engineer that's a junior engineer and they're getting paid $50,000. Why? Because they're focused on the tech. The tech is a tool. Imagine somebody that wants to get certified in a hammer, a screwdriver, a nail gun. You'd laugh and say, why are you doing this? Instead, you say, wow, this is the skill set of somebody that can change somebody's business, change somebody's life, make patients come in the hospital and not die and are more likely to survive. That's an architect. And I've done that with healthcare. Teach a bank how to make an extra 3% returns. It's a lot of money. And companies
teach them how to make an extra 0.3% return.
Yeah.
That's still monumental.
Now we know what does a cloud architect do and why we're here. Tech is not our world. It's what the tech can do for our customers. And you know, I often find it easier to take somebody that's never worked in tech and get them a cloud architect job. Now, I love when I get somebody that's been a cloud engineer to turn them first because now they have the tech background. But the problem is, if you're in love with the technology, first it makes you biased. And if you're biased, then you don't recommend the right things. Imagine a doctor that only liked Pfizer drugs. Here, you can have your Lipitor, you can have your Zithromax. But doctor, I'm allergic to macrolides. That's okay, you can have your Zithromax. But if you give me Zithromax, I'm going to stop breathing and die. Here, you can have some Zithromax. You can't do that. You can't be a trusted advisor. And an architect needs to be a consultant, a trusted advisor, and say, I got some really cool EC2 instances for you. Now, if you work for AWS, that's another story. You'll talk about your virtual machines and generic terms and ultimately map them down to EC2 instances, and that's fine. But you know, the key is you've got to care about your customers and their outcomes more than the tech.
So we got, I'm going to bring up some things from the chat box here.
From Angelo, always good seeing you, buddy. As an architect, my goal is to know your goals.
Absolutely, Angelo. And Angelo is a fantastic architect.
Yeah, he is. And as a leader, my goal is to help you achieve your goals. Start with being curious and genuinely listening to learn. That says a lot. Start by being curious and genuinely listening to learn. Not listening to put your skill set or certifications in front of the needs of the client, not trying to showcase anything else. The more you listen, 2 ears, 1 mouth, you're going to be able to understand so much more, especially if you have that business acumen and that ability to communicate. They're going to share more with you than if they didn't like you at all. What about you, Mike and Chris?
Definitely. I mean, if you don't listen to them, you can't figure out how to solve their problem. I mean, like you can ask any. I'm sure there's plenty of our students in the chat box there that just finished up with the project where they dealt with plenty of vendors who didn't want to listen to them. I know that's what they were telling me. So listen to your customers. Listen to your. If you're in going through the interview process, listen to the hiring managers.
Yeah.
Listen to what they're actually saying. And if you listen and you listen intently and with purpose, then you're going to gather a lot of information. But nobody wants to do that. So if you do it, you're going to set yourself apart.
You'll stand out and get promoted so fast.
Yeah.
When I check my personal corporate email once a day, there's upwards of 100 people. Mike, I've got this product. Can we talk about it? I don't even know what it's for. And people are forced sending me stuff. The answer is no, 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 no. Block, 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 block. Now, if somebody says, Mike, I'm a consultant. I'd like to learn your business goals to see how I could help you. I'll entertain the client meeting. But as soon as somebody says, I got this product for you, it's like, okay, round peg, square hole. You're trying to jam this thing in there, and I'm not biting.
Yeah. And so now you see why I asked the poll question that I did at the beginning of class. This right here, like this is what we're talking about. Like at the end of the day, are people listening to you? And if they're not listening to you, if they're not even asking.
Yeah. Or at least doing the due diligence to research. I think this will probably be rather relevant. Is I'm always checking updates, news, the latest and greatest in what cloud is what's happening in the industry. And occasionally, more often than I'd like, I would get an invitation for someone to show me or try to get me certified in a series of things that if they pay attention, they'd eliminate a good portion of what they're trying to sell me. But it's such a broad base of not listening, not paying attention, doing any type of due diligence. You wouldn't alienate yourself as much if you would just take the time to focus.
I gotta say something here about this because Mike always talks about how his LinkedIn is flooded with people asking him about this and that and that. So I'm the non-tech guy in the company. It's very clear. It's very clear in the title, Chief Operations Officer. Got nothing to do with tech. Very clear in my experience. So nothing to do with tech. But I've had here's one thing in my inbox, like multiple times. Are you interested in learning more about cybersecurity management? And then again, like a week later, are you interested in cybersecurity and IT strategy? And then another one. I wanted to reach out again to see if you got your last message. We can help you solve blah 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 blah. And it's like, how do you know that's something that needs to be solved? Like, you just telling me that you're going to solve X, Y, Z. And then I got another one, and this one is, hope everything is going well. You must be super busy. I'm following up to check.
That aggravates me more than anything. You're mad because I won't respond to you about something you know nothing about.
Right. So mine's not at talking about certifications, but mine's are training or or fixing problems. They're trying to, like, half of mine are, I can fill your roles. It's like,
Do I even have any roles open?
I don't have any roles. If I need to fill a role, I got a talent pool ready to fill it. Like,
I'm not coming to someone I don't know who has no track record.
When we say that you can set yourself apart by just doing the listening, then we're not kidding. Like, it's an everyday thing that people aren't listening. So,
sorry.
Go ahead, Mike.
I thought you were at a natural pause. I know we've got a lot to cover, but I want to touch Ajmal's question real quick.
Okay.
Because it's a dangerous question. So right now we're talking about architecture, which is managing business performance and leading teams and selling and consulting. We do not script. You can't fly the airplane and keep people in the seats. We do not build. We don't touch the tech. If you work as an architect anywhere, AWS, Azure, Google, Cisco, IBM, Microsoft, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, Capgemini, and I already probably talked about a million architect jobs. The architect designs it, they present it, they sell it. As soon as it's done, it goes to a build team, which builds it, which is managed by a completely different department. Architects do not build the technology. You cannot be focused on a customer's business performance and writing a Terraform script. You cannot be doing DevOps. It's somebody else's job. You cannot be doing SysOps, which is somebody else's job. And I know I say this a lot, but I love watching Simone Biles as a gymnast. I love watching Usain Bolt as a sprinter. I love watching, Michael Phelps swim. Do you know what Usain Bolt doesn't do? He doesn't play soccer or football. He doesn't run marathons. He doesn't do gymnastics. He trains to sprint, and that's why he's the best in the world. Simone Biles isn't joining me in yoga class, I promise you. She's training to be the best gymnast in the world, and that's why she's the most decorated Olympic gymnast of all time. And I'm glad you asked the question. No, we teach people how to become architects, and that's why we get people hired every day at AWS, Azure, Google, Cisco, IBM, Microsoft, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, JP Morgan Chase, Capgemini, BBC, you name it, our students work there because we train them to be architects. If we trained engineers, we would teach Terraform scripting, but this is architecture, and architecture is about improving your customer's business. It is a consultant role. If you work for a provider, it's a sales role as well. If you work for an organization, it's not a sales role, but it's still a design, present, and sell role. It's still leading the cultural change for cloud adoption, et cetera.
So I want to take a second. I want to make sure everybody knows we do a webinar every week. This week it'll be Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, where we go over the cloud architect role. And so I know we're doing it here. Obviously, that's the topic of the show tonight. But I also want to make sure everybody's aware of that webinar where it's a Zoom webinar that you can register for, and you can join us, and you can come in and listen to us. And for up to an hour and a half, after we have a small presentation, for up to an hour and a half or more, we'll be there to answer questions off mute for you and have conversations with you and be interactive with you. We love YouTube and we love the chat box and everything, but nothing replaces being able to hear your voice and answer your questions in real time. So I just wanted to mention that we do that every week on Thursday at 1 p.m. Not only will we talk about the cloud architect role, but we'll also talk about our programs that have helped so many people get there. Because again, our whole goal is to help you reach your goal. And if your goal is to become a cloud architect, then we want you to.
We got you covered.
Yeah. And it's all about being competent for the job. I even dropped the question in the chat box: which firms would hire you without experience? Well, AWS hires our students all the time. Jordan Kitko, for example, had 0 experience before they hired him. Ivan Tamba was a waiter before AWS hired him as a solution architect. Coyote hired him, for an example. Microsoft Azure hired Balwinder, who was a stay-at-home mom. Al, for example, just got hired by Deloitte a couple of months ago as a senior solution architect. And what was his last job? He was selling Kleenex at Kimberly-Clark. Very smart guy. But the point is I just gave you 3 examples. Anybody will hire. JP Morgan Chase hires our architects constantly with and without experience. and with and without college degrees. Finding someone that's really good at their job is impossible. I mean, you interview 10,000 people that are AWS certified, you most likely still won't find a single capable cloud architect. I interviewed 1,000 AWS people before I took this course and asked them what was cloud computing. Of the 1,000, not a single one could even tell me what cloud computing was. Now they gave me this nonsense on-demand access to compute resources over the internet. Well, I can tell you, you can have a cloud that's not connected to the internet at all. And I've been working with clouds long before that. A cloud is just somebody else's network and data center that they rent your space in. It's no more than a hotel where they're giving you a hotel room in the hotel. That's all it is. It's somebody else's physical servers, physical stores, physical load balancers, physical firewalls that they virtualize and share access to. That's it.
All right. So I got some question. I got a question from Marla, and it's going to move us on to our next topic. Because I know you were going to be talking about this, so we'll use this as a segue.
Okay.
So I'm going to go backwards from her questions. So, because the second one's not really a question, it's just a clarification. Let me find it. So, my question assumes you have the necessary business acumen and technical knowledge.
Absolutely.
All right. No. So my question assumes that you have these things.
Okay.
All the tech across cloud vendors is the same. TOGAF teaches a universal language for cloud architecture. Which is more helpful to market yourself, TOGAF or vendor certification? Assuming you have all the necessary business acumen and technical knowledge.
Great question.
They're not even in the same universe. TOGAF was worth 1,000,000 times more. And we're going to get into the next one, but I want to caution too much as far as using certifications. When I reached my first good architect job, and then I went again, let's talk a little bit more about TOGAF. Mm-hmm. My manager, who was a VP at Cisco, he reported to an SVP who reported to John Chambers. That was it. Normally at Cisco, you'd have 15 levels of management, but before you'd reach the CEO. My manager says, Mike, this CCI thing, I'd like you to remove it from your business card. I said, what? I read 75,000 pages to get this thing. I spent $40,000 to do it because in those days, they didn't have courses. You had to do everything. And he said, yes. He said, do you want to be viewed as a technician or do you want to be viewed as an executive architect? The choice is yours. I'll tell you, I didn't tell anybody I was a CCIE anymore. I got 3 promotions in 3 years and used a bonus to buy a small house in New Jersey that I turned into a rental property. That was the difference that it made in my life by taking the CCIE and focusing on digital transformation versus certifications.
That's good. Okay.
My technology broke. Sorry about that.
See, I want all you guys to be super successful, so I'm trying to share these tech career secrets.
Yeah, well, so since Marla asked about TOGAF, what is TOGAF as it relates to the conversation that we're talking about here?
So, and that's actually great. I'm actually even going to talk a little bit about the TOGAF process after we define TOGAF.
Right, I was going to say let's talk about TOGAF, benefits of TOGAF,
and over the years, my perspective of TOGAF has changed, especially as it pertains to training architects. But TOGAF is a framework to design an architecture. There's plenty of frameworks. The DoD has a framework. There's the Zachman framework. There's the TOGAF framework. I happen to like the TOGAF framework because Cisco uses it, IBM uses it, Huawei uses it, Intel uses it, Microsoft uses it, Deloitte uses it, Accenture uses it. Pretty much anybody who's anybody uses TOGAF. And it's 2 things. It's a common language. How ridiculous is it that we can call a virtual machine an EC2 instance, a compute engine instance, or a virtual machine? It's insanity. And do you know what happens when you have 3 different words for the same thing or 4 different words? Errors and mistakes occur. So one of the fundamentals of TOGAF is to come up with a standard taxonomy or lexicon or words that matter. Same thing doctors use. You're not going to hear a doctor call a drug Lipitor. The drug rep will. The doctor will say, okay, let me prescribe you atorvastatin 20 milligrams. Why? Because every other doctor in every other country knows what atorvastatin is. They know what a statin is, and they know how it works and why to use it. We start using marketing drugs and silly marketing names like the kind that AWS pays people millions of dollars to develop. We cause confusion. Nobody even knows what the product. So first it's that. And then it's a process and a methodology to deploy things. So, they've got a framework called the architectural deployment model. I'll go over it a little bit here. Now, it's this architecture as a cycle, and ideally you start at the beginning. So let's talk about what their cycle would be, because I kind of love this framework in a lot of ways. It all starts with an architecture vision, right? The architecture vision is, what is the company trying to achieve? What do they want to do? That's the basis of every architecture. Here we find out what's going on. Artificial intelligence is now here, and every company out there is adopting it. They've got a new vision that says, let me adopt artificial intelligence. Now, the first part is assessing the organization. Are they really ready for it? Do they have the budget for it? Do they have the people for it? What are the risks involved in determining that? The next part of it is determining how the business operates. It's called the business architecture. I've been a business architect. Alonzo's wife is a business architect. My friend Francis is a business architect. We strategy consultants help businesses run better. We re-architect them. It's a great job, by the way. So first we have to, as an enterprise architect or even a cloud architect, you should be mapping out the business architecture. Sales works by somebody enters this thing into a system, it hits a database, it hits a sales rep schedules a follow-up call, et cetera, et cetera. How does the process work? How does accounting work? How does payroll work? How does everything? So the first thing that we need to do after we establish the vision is determine how the business works. What skills do you think you need for this? Business acumen. You can't figure out how the business works if you don't understand business, which is why we teach so much business acumen to our architecture students. So then we baseline how the business works. Now we've determined how do we want the business to work in the future. For example, a website wants to put a chatbot on. Okay, they would like this. Fine. Now we develop a new business architecture with what these chatbots could do. Now we've got an old architecture and a new architecture. We have to perform a gap analysis to determine what's different between the old and new. And then from there, we're in a position to start thinking about the plan, how to change things. Now, the next thing we need to do is look at the information systems. The stuff in the data center, the stuff in the cloud. What is it now? Where are routers? Where are switches? Where are firewalls? What's working? What's not working? Are servers utilized, overutilized? Do we have capacity? Baseline that. Now we need to think of what technology systems are going to help that business, information technology systems get that business in the future. Guess what? Now we come up with a target technology, perform a gap analysis between where we started, where we go. Poof. Now we look at the organization's technology. It's not just cloud stuff that helps a business run. There could be security systems in place, like biometric scanners in place. There could be key fobs. There could be anything. So now we need to look at the organization's technology. What is the current technology that the organization has deployed? Is it IP-based? Is it using some proprietary protocols? What future technologies do we need to do? Again, now we've got to baseline the current, find the target, and come up with the gap analysis. Now, at this point, after we've done all this and we've got a good baseline, we've got to look for opportunities and solutions. Maybe AWS has this cool new technology that's going to help the customer. Maybe Microsoft's got this new AI that's going to help the customer. Maybe Google's got this new technology. Maybe Cisco does. And this is where we start coming up with solution building blocks and architectural building blocks. Basically, they're things that can assist with the organization, and it's changed. Now we got to start migration planning, right? So part of the migration planning is the organization ready for the change? Do they have the right people with the right level of sophistication? If not, do they outsource or do they hire the people? Because you can't make these changes until you have the right people. Now, once you interact the technology and you add technology, it changes the workflow of the people. So you got to plan that in the migration. And then you got to figure out who can actually do it, the migration, because it's not going to be the architects. We're not allowed to touch the customer's technology. And sure, you'll see cloud architect job descriptions where they do, but they're not cloud architect jobs, they're engineering jobs. They don't pay architecture salaries, there's no way to get ahead, and they are engineering jobs regardless of the title. Now we got to think who's going to govern the thing. We need somebody in charge to make sure that Billy Bob doesn't break stuff. Because believe me, Billy Bob will break stuff. I promise you, I've had a lot of Billy Bobs that I've worked with in life. And now the governance isn't just going to be the CIO. The CEO is going to be involved. The chief operating officer is going to be involved. The department heads of every department are going to be involved. So now there's there. So now that we figure out all this kind of stuff, now we got to convince the management to adopt the new technology, which means sales. And I don't care if you work at JP Morgan Chase Bank, you still got to sell the management to adopt your new technology strategy. Or if you work for Azure, you got to convince the customer to go buy your solution. Because if you don't buy it and you just develop beautiful documents and build PowerPoint slides, but you can't sell it, the architecture dies. Now, guess what? Change management. Do you think you could just change the tech on a dime? You can't. Every time you change the tech, it affects the business processes. So for every piece or kind of technology change that you have to do, you now need to get everybody on board. So when I say you need CXO relevancy or the ability to know what a CXO cares about, you need it. And hopefully you understand why. When I tell you need sales skills and you can't do this job without sales skills, I hope you understand why. You're selling engineers to work on your team. You're selling architects that don't work for you to work on your team. You're selling the managers on your vision, and you're going to be selling products and solutions in most cases too. When I say you need leadership skills, you got to now influence other people to see your ways of thinking. You got to get the guy in finance to talk to the girl in marketing that hate each other and agree on a solution. So now you're doing relationship management and a little psychological coaching along the way. Now you see why we need so much emotional intelligence. Now, in between doing all this, we're writing documents, whether it be statements of work, documents for the sales team, documents for the engineering team that's going to go build this thing. There's a lot of documents. And in between these things, because we're not touching the tech, we're presenting at conferences, we're delivering executive briefings, we're traveling to clients, we're meeting with stakeholders, we're managing their expectations, we're responding to RFIs, requests for information, RFPs, requests for proposals, RFQs, requests for quotes or pricing. That's what we're doing. And when we're not doing that, and JP Morgan Chase Bank, for example, I picked them because they hire a lot of our architects, says, we want to deploy this new thing, and the cloud provider or the tech provider doesn't have the solution. Now we got to go to the product teams and sell their management about why they need to develop custom software for us to go have the features to sell something to a client. And then convince them that it's okay for us to sell something, but because the product isn't ready when we sell it and won't be ready for 2 years and we promise it to them, the company can't even recognize revenue until 2 years later. So now we got to convince the CEO, sure, we're going to go sell this $1 billion thing, but you can't count on your earnings for 3 more years. Now do you see why this job is impossible without leadership skills, executive skills, communication skills, and why it's so easy for me to get people hired as cloud architects? Because we teach these business skills, these leadership skills. And the secret to getting hired is being great at your job. It has nothing to do with your experience. It has nothing to do with how many years you've had jobs that were completely unrelated before. It has to do with how good you are for the job right now. And that's the job. And now you know what TOGAF is. Now you know what I like about TOGAF. I've changed my mind over it over the years. And the other thing I like is it teaches students when they do it. Now, there's no teaching you how to be an architect in TOGAF. They don't teach you any of that. It's just a framework to a structured way of thinking. But I like TOGAF because it keeps people so focused on not learning DevOps, not learning SysOps, not learning Terraform, not learning how to code, and it focuses them on, here's the job. Yoo-hoo, Biff, this is the job. Focus on this. This is somebody else's job. It's kind of like my cat. If I want to go somewhere with my cat, and I love my cat, for me, I just walk straight there. My cat has to stop, rub against the furniture. She has to scratch her nails on something. She has to stop and drink her water out of her glass because she doesn't drink out of a bowl. Then she has to show me she wants fresh shrimp, only for us to actually go outside to practice yoga. But it's those processes. And that's what most people do to their careers. Instead of going in a straight line, they zigzag, 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 and they never get it. Squirrel. Yeah, my cat does love squirrel. Clearly, I love my cat, Cindy.
Yeah, we've got 2 cat guys here. I'm partial to the dog canine persuasion, but with these gentlemen here, I get all the cat feeds and everything else I can stand. So, but right, Mike, you talked about the TOGAF, the framework, what's included with it, the needs. Basically, we have that broad design, present, and sell, and you really drill down to what how that framework relates. So, what does an enterprise architect do?
Exactly what a cloud architect does, which is design, present, and sell. But since I just told you what an enterprise, and I'm gonna get involved in that a little more in a minute. But since I just told you, how does that fit in with what the cloud architect does? Lead the cultural change for cloud adoption, develop and coordinate cloud strategy, and develop and coordinate the adoption process. Kind of the same, huh? So going back to the cloud architect, the CIO, which is hiring people, is setting the requirements for what they want, is saying, this is what I want. And then you get people that get 10x certified in all certifications that have absolutely zero to do with architecture. So the key is the cloud architect is supposed to be a trusted advisor, someone that can evaluate the business, that can determine the business's needs, and help find a solution to improve business performance. The enterprise architect works across all domains, just like the cloud architect. They manage stakeholders. They get business requirements. They develop the architecture vision. They help map out the business architecture. They map out the technology selection. They act as a go-between between the executives that need their business tuned and the super smart genius engineers that are going to go build the stuff. And I want to make this clear. I love engineers. They make our blueprints turn into reality. What I don't like is somebody trying to fly an airplane and keep the patients in their seats at the same time, or the passenger. Sorry, my old medical background comes into everything. And that's what happens when someone decides to be an architect and focuses on the tech. And still, look at me, I'm excited, I'm a techie, I'm great with the tech. Congratulations, you're great with the tech, but you didn't help your customer with their goals or your job, which is digital transformation. So a cloud architect and an enterprise architect are all tasked with improving the customer's business performance and the way the business operates with technology. It's just the enterprise architect focuses on all technologies, and the average cloud architect focuses on single cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid multi-cloud, and super cloud solutions. But the $500,000 plus cloud architects, of which there's plenty, they're all focused on the end-to-end strategy, regardless of whether it's cloud or not cloud, because it's the same tech anyway.
So you started to talk about this. So what happens when the architect decides that they're not going to focus on sales? They're not going to focus on the customer solution. They're not going to focus on the problem. They're going to focus on the tech.
Okay, so let's talk about it in two situations. Let's say you work at AWS, Azure, Google, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, or any company that sells architectural solutions to their client. Here's the thing. So I recently had a student that got a new architect job. It was $193,000 base salary, 42% commission, and they were given about $500,000 of stock options, which, 38% vest over the first year, and every 2 years they get their stock refreshed. The 42% bonus that they have is based on what they sell.
That's the minimum. That's the minimum.
That's the minimum.
It goes up from there.
And now if they don't sell, they won't get their 42% bonus. If they sell a lot, they can get 100% bonus or a 200% bonus.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. What is the manager that hires the architects judged on? They're judged on the following, because that's what you're judged on as a cloud architect. The manager is judged on how much the organization sold and whether the customers are satisfied and whether that cloud architect or enterprise architect was able to get the customer to issue a press release that says, I partnered with Microsoft and it's helped us by either saving money, obtaining new customers. That's the three things that we're judged for. Now, if I got a team full of techies and I'm a manager and they got 80 certifications, do I get paid more as a manager? No, I get fired because they're not selling.
Yeah.
If the architect is not selling, they get fired. They're part of the next layoff. If the architect says a lot, they get promoted to principal architect or distinguished architect. We are judged by what we sell. We are promoted based upon what we sell. We are paid based upon what we sell. And this is in business. In an MBA program, they'll call it an agency problem. And usually an agency problem is, the sales rep will sell the easiest thing to sell, regardless if the company loses money in it or not, because it's easy to sell. In this case, we've got people, when they come from engineering, they actually create the agency problem for themselves. They do all the stuff that they don't get paid for. All this stuff that doesn't build their career, and they're excited about it because they said, I'm a techie, I'm a techie, I'm a techie. In fact, I saw a sales engineer make a LinkedIn post the other day that said there are two kinds of sales engineers. The kind that know how to answer all your questions, and there's another kind of sales engineer that takes you out to dinner and expenses your dinner. Which are you? And I responded to this, said, does it matter? Sales engineers are judged on how much they sell. If one sales engineer says $100 million a product by doing it by taking people to dinner and winning friends, and another sales engineer sells $2 million, but they're a technical expert, one sales engineer got paid $4 million that year. The other one got fired. Now, they can be proud that they're a techie, but you got to look at what your job is. We get paid to improve our customers' business performance. Mm-hmm. We get promoted based upon sales. We do not get promoted based upon things. And the reason I tell you in most cases it's harder for cloud engineers to become architects, or any engineer to become architects, is, let's face it, I was once a techie. Most engineers love the tech. If you're an engineer and you love the tech, have a little lab in your house and have fun on your spare time. But I promise you, every minute you spend in engineering is 1 minute you're not spending focusing on your career. And every minute that you are distracted from your goal is 1 minute that's hurting you. Your smart competition, the Simone Biles of the world, the Usain Bolts of the world, the Michael Phelps of the world, they're practicing their craft and they're honing their craft into the best in the world. Every minute that you're distracted, thinking you're learning your next certification is going to help you, I'd rather see you take a yoga class or a dance class and get some stress relief, because it's sure not helping your career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better, Mike. What about those chat questions, Chris?
All right. So from the chat, we've got from Mark earlier. It says, so a cloud architect is a cloud salesman / consultant, also dealing with CTI, CIO, and CFO all day, every day. That's a lot of egos to manage. How do you manage that? Trust me, the bigger egos are going to be below the CTO and CEO and CFO. But good question.
Good question. The majority of the egos that I deal with are with software developers and other people. And Mark, here's the reason why. The people that get the most respect and have the most power in their job, they're not looking for power. It's the people that are behind the scenes that work hard, that aren't well compensated for it, that have the egos because it's the only thing they have left. But let's talk about this. Why do you think in our architecture training program we have CXO relevancy training, leadership training, sales training, emotional training, training in how to exercise influence, because you can't do the job without it? Now, Mark, personally, how I learned it is I learned to practice medicine. I got real good at managing egos in medicine. Now, I also learned how to ask the right questions in medicine. And I also learned how not to offend people in medicine and how to be emotionally intelligent. I will tell you that I did my fair share of certifications. Nobody cared, except for the CCIA. That was worth something. And then, Mark, what I did is an MBA at Widener University. It was my second master's degree. And then after that, I took $100,000 of training, and I'm not joking, in CXO relevancy training and sales training and emotional intelligence training and presentation training. And I give all that to my students. That's why we came up with our Elite Architect program, to be able to train all of these skills so that people are prepared for the most elite roles. That's why you develop your leadership skills. That's what leaders do. This is our job. We manage it. And trust me, it's actually a fun job. And it's a lot easier to take somebody to Morton's, buy them some steak, some Silver Oak wine with dinner, maybe some filet Oscars, kind of nice, maybe a nice baked potato and some asparagus, finish it up with a Macallan 25. And Marco, I'm going to add to that because that's a way a lot of these things are done. Yes, I also took training in golf and how to select food and wine and the right liquor for my clients. Now, I don't code as an architect, nor does any architect, but I promise you, you will have to learn food and beverage selection. So make sure your architecture training at least touches upon that too. We do.
All right. Here's another question. I don't understand this question, but I'll read it. Nate asked, do cloud architects use capabilities, maturity models, and business process maturity models?
So, Nate, that's kind of a typical MBA thing. And some businesses do use these types of capability models and maturity models. I don't. That's more of a management consulting kind of thing. And it's also more of an academic thing they teach in an MBA program.
Oh,
But
that's
we
why I
do,
don't get it. My MBA was from a practical university, not from
yeah.
a
But, more realistically, every organization has a framework for how they do things. With project management, it could be agile or it could be waterfall. TOGAF is very similarly aligned with the waterfall methodology, for example. But, it's that we're less academic about what we do than these models, and we're more practical in what we do. But yes, following things similar to that is definitely part of what we do.
Thanks for clearing that up for me, Mike. Now I know what these are.
I know the academic and the practical things. I only use practical things.
Right.
I know where Nate went to school. We went to the same university.
Okay. What'd you say?
I know where Nate went to school. Apparently, we did our MBAs in the same university.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, we answered that one. Okay. Yeah, this one is usually one of my favorite topics to talk about. Vinay says many management within organizations have cloud architect role mixed up with cloud engineers. This comes from management sometimes to mix roles as management themselves are not clear about roles. I want to start this one off. So if you're dealing with actual managers that are actually mixing up the roles, run. Run. But what's usually more often than not happening, and this could be this will be different in different parts of the world probably. But what's happening here in the United States is that you got a combination of HR and hiring managers creating job descriptions that make no sense at all. And so they combine these roles in the job descriptions. And then the first interview is a combination of these job descriptions, because usually the person that's doing the first interview, the first phone call, doesn't actually know the role and is just going based off the job description. So it creates this impression that these roles are mixed. They are not. Now, of course, there are some organizations out there that will try and save a penny here by combining roles. Those are not the ones that you should be going for. You as an individual want to work somewhere that understands that they are independent roles. Because if you as a cloud architect are doing the things that the cloud engineer does, what does the cloud engineer do?
Right.
And how can you do your job as a cloud architect if you're doing the cloud engineer's job? So I'd like to hear what Mike says here. I already got on my soapbox at the beginning of the show, so I'm not going to get on another soapbox. This is where I usually get on my soapbox, is with this topic. So I'll let Mike chime in.
So, Vinay, I'll touch one thing, and then I'm going to talk about the strategic organizations. I did get one job in 2001, and it was at a company that posted a consulting systems architect. I walked in on the first day. There was a Chinese man. He was about 35 years old. He says, "Are you the new consulting systems architect?" I said, "Yes." He hugged me like I've never been hugged before, and he ran out the door. I mean, I never saw anybody move so fast in my entire life. And then I spoke to my manager, and he says, I know we interviewed you to be a consulting systems architect, but that was only so we could pay you like $200,000 a year. Because and this is back, 2001. He said, engineers get paid this, but you are so good, we made you an architect. But I want you to do engineering. Now, I ran out of that door as fast as that Chinese guy that gave me the hug and ran out of the door, because I knew that wasn't the job. Actually, that's true. I did make it 3 days before I tried to convince him that, are you sure you don't want to do this? And I took another job as a principal architect at Comcast and went there, and it was over, to design their backbone. Because I had 2 offers waiting at the same time. I just wasn't sure which one I wanted. If an organization mixes an architect and an engineer in the same person, it's because they don't value technology. That's an organization that has technology. They don't know how to use it. They're not strategic about their technology, and they're most likely losing money and going out of business. That is not a place to build a career. In today's world, organizations that leverage technology, Walmart, Amazon, they're successful. Organizations that don't leverage technology are dead. Who do you think had better technology systems, Bed Bath & Beyond or Walmart? You walk into Walmart, they have exactly what you want. The second they run out, it's restocked because they're supply chain systems. I love Bed Bath & Beyond. It was the most fun store. I like to cook. I used to go there almost every day and find some new cooking things and ask the staff. They were great what to do. I was willing to wait for the staff and pay more for the staff, but most people are not. That's why Bed Bath & Beyond is now bankrupt and Walmart is growing. So, yeah, there are organizations, but they're not ones you want to work for. And they're not any real organization like an Amazon or a Cisco or a Microsoft or an IBM or a Palo Alto or Fortinet, a Dell, a Deloitte, an Accenture, a JP Morgan Chase, a Barclays Bank. I mean, you name it. Any real organization that values technology as a strategy, and they're the only people that really need architects, are going to have a real architect, and they're not going to be touching the technology.
Yeah.
So Ajmal asked a good follow-up question. What's an obvious sign that an organization is mixing cloud architect and cloud engineer roles?
The second they mention implement or build,
mention, we're talking about when you're talking with the hiring manager.
Yes.
Because here's the problem: you can't the obvious signs. If you can't find the obvious signs until you actually talk to the hiring manager.
Yeah, you'll never know because the job descriptions are meaningless.
So now go with what you were going to say, Mike. I just had to make that clear that when you're actually talking to.
If someone says that, what's your coding skills? Because our cloud architects code, it's not an architect job.
Right.
If someone says, do you know how to use Terraform? It's not an architect job.
Or
if someone
Python.
asks, what are your DevOps skills?
Yeah.
It is not an architect job. I don't care what the job title is. I'm a CEO, but I'm a counselor. I'm a manager. I'm an educator. I don't care what the job title is.
There's a caveat to this. Every question that Mike just said, that if they ask you about this, they could be asking you these because they're on your resume.
Yep.
And not because they're what the job is. So it's a combination. So there's no obviousness to any of this. But assuming in a perfect world you have the proper resume for an architect, then everything that Mike just said is applicable to being obvious signs when speaking to the hiring manager. So it's not, there's no golden rule, no one size fits all answer to this. But so that's the thing. So if assuming that you've got the proper branding, you've got the proper resume, you've gotten the proper, you're presented properly, then you will be able to see these obvious signs that Mike just mentioned.
Yeah.
And actually, I might ask someone about their super technical skills to see who they are. Because first I'm going to ask them how they communicate. And that's going to be obvious in how they describe things. Then I'm going to ask them super deep technical things. And if they say, I want to be coding or I want to do this, I know not to hire them too. So I like to ask questions that I know people know to see how they respond as a baseline. I will also in every interview ask someone a question that I know they don't know to see if they're honest with me or if they lie to me. If they lie to me, they're completely disqualified. And sometimes I will throw certain questions like this in to see how they respond. Because I don't hire an engineer to be an architect. I hire an architect. I would never hire an architect to be an engineer because they're not qualified. It's a different job. So I like to gauge people on what their skills are because there's a place for all of us in this world. Every one of us can have a job that we love. But it's about finding the right job for the right person and studying the careers that make us happy.
So one more question following this interview thread, and then we'll get back to the topic of discussion here from Anakin Cloudwalker. How do you explain that you have good listening skills? And I asked a follow-up question that he said he meant in an interview. I know cloud architects are all supposed to have great listening skills, but I've noticed I often catch more details and nuances than others. So
okay, so
I'll let Mike go, and then Alonzo, and I'll close it out.
Alonzo, ask me a question.
Hello, Mike. How do you secure a enterprise environment with
Okay,
security?
Alonzo, I want to make sure I understand the question. Your question, as you asked it, is you asked, how do I secure an enterprise environment? Is that correct?
Correct, Mike.
Okay, now let's talk about it. So first, you just confirmed that you even heard it. And actually, so if we study the work of Robert Cialdini, who's one of the best with regards to actually who studied influence, he actually found that when you repeat things back to people, it makes them feel comfortable. That's why you'll see all executives repeat things back to people. And they not only tested it on executives, they actually tested it on waiters and waitresses and other people that serve food. And they found, so to confirm, you would like a hamburger, cooked medium rare with lettuce, tomato, but no bun, and a side of broccoli instead of French fries, the tips were greater, and they were greater by a large amount.
Yeah, to follow up on that, you can't say, I mean, you can say that you have good listening skills, but you
Yeah.
have to practice the listening skills.
Mhm.
Mike's is the most readily apparent way to practice the interview skills or practice the listening skills. The other way is that if you're actually good at it, then do it in the interview.
Yeah.
Reference something that they said at the very beginning, at the end.
Tie it back together.
Tie it back together.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do
Absolutely.
it. If you're actually good at it, then do it.
Yeah.
Practice what you say you're good at. If they say that, if they make a point about something on the second question that they ask you, then
Right.
on the 10th question, tie it back somehow, if it's possible. That's how you do it. Your follow-ups that we cover in the program about the thank yous and all that, use those as opportunities as well. If you actually practice good listening skills, you'll be able to do that in the thank you. So you can't, I mean, yeah, you can say you have good listening skills, but you actually have to show it.
Yeah. Everything's
They'll pick up on
demonstrative at the interview. Yeah.
They will pick up on it. Okay. So let's see. Let's get back to the topic here. Alonzo, you got anything that you've got from Mike?
Yeah, I'm interested. We know that cloud architects come. We want to know what's happening and how they're able to help organizations from a business transformative perspective. So, with that being said, what is a digital transformation architect?
Now, that's a great point. It's a term that's thrown around all the time. Every IT architect should be focused on digital transformation. They actually came up with this term specifically because there were some architects that didn't understand what being an architect was. And they were so busy trying to pretend they were engineers and they weren't doing any digital transformation. They were doing technology engineering. So a digital transformation architect is a business executive, just like all architects, that helps an organization find ways to improve their business performance by leveraging technology. No different than a cloud architect or an enterprise architect, and it's a great question. And I'm glad you asked that question, because that is the real definition of an architect that drives change. You know, Chris and I one day were speaking with a principal architect over at Microsoft because he wanted us to do some things with him on something. And he made a joke. He says, well, we're all architects. That means the only thing we do is write Word documents and PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets. We don't touch tech. That's mandatory not to touch the tech if you're an architect. And we had a joke about it, but that's the reality. Real architects focus on digital transformation. Real building architects design a hotel, a shopping mall. You don't put a hammer in their hand or a saw in their hand or a drill bit. That's just not what we do. Whatever the next question is, guys.
Okay, so we talked about digital transformation architect and that how that concept came to be. What is the actual process of transformation?
You know, there's a lot of different processes, but I go back to that TOGAF process because I really like it.
Yeah.
It really starts with, what is the vision of the company? What are you really trying to do? And then it's about baselining the business and understanding how the business works. And then figuring out the 2B or target architecture, which is how you want the business to operate in the future. It then goes back into mapping the current technology, determining what kinds of technology in a vendor generic form will actually get to the goals. And then creating a technology architecture and figuring out, is it step 1, step 2, step 3? So let me give you an example. Let's say you deal with a client and they want to bring their systems to the cloud. The client now has 100,000 servers, which is not uncommon for the kind of clients I work with. Each server has a 1 terabyte drive, and each system's got like 15,000 IOPS per 1 terabyte drive per virtual machine that's sitting in the organization's data center. Now they got to migrate it to the cloud. They want to move it all to the cloud for some crazy reason instead of doing, half in the data center, half in the cloud.
Yeah.
Poof. I know I need at least 15,000 virtual machines in the data center, right? Maybe 13,000 because of auto scaling, maybe 20,000 because the cloud, if they're not virtual machines in the data center, if they're physical machines, they're not going to work as good in the cloud because the cloud's going to give you less performance, slower disk performance. Okay, so now I have a 19 million IOPS RAID card in the server in my data center, and now the fastest I can get with AWS is 250,000. Now, what do? I need that 19 million. Do I take 4 times 19? Do I take 80 EBS volumes of the fastest kind I can and RAID them together in RAID 0, and another 8 of these and another RAID 0? Or I say keep it in the data center and don't spend $10 million a month on disk storage from Amazon when you could buy this card for $200,000, which is going to give you the same performance. But that's up to you. But you got to figure it out. But the process is find the business needs, find the ultimate business goal, look at the technology architecture, determine the target technology architecture, do a gap analysis, and make your design. So now we say, okay, we need 15,000 virtual machines. So we map that out. Is it 15,000 EC2 instances? Is it 15,000 Azure machines? Is it 15,000 Google Compute Engine instances? Guess what? It doesn't matter. They're all the same. So now we're going to go send a bid out to AWS, Azure, and Google and see who can do it for a lower price. Kind of like if you were going to buy chicken from the grocery store. If Aldi is $3 a pound and Publix is $11 a pound, you're probably going to buy it at Aldi unless you love Publix. My wife loves Publix. She stops there once a day, 3 times a day, and she goes there. My brother comes in, he says, I could buy that and save you $2,000 a month on Mike's ridiculous healthy food selections. And he's actually right. But that's either here nor there by going to a different place. But that's the key. Now we need a firewall. Okay, we pick the firewall. We call Cisco. We call Checkpoint. We call Fortinet. And we see which firewall best meets our needs. And then we pop that on the architecture. So really, you can think of digital transformation. You can think of innovation as the following. Find out what the end goal is. Figure out all the things that you need to get to the end goal. And then document it. Now, the reality is if I'm a doctor and I've got a sick patient and I know they've got a strep, I've got a sore throat. I culture it and I find out that it's strep pyogenes. What am I going to do? I'm going to pick a drug that kills strep pyogenes. Now I'm an architect. Now I need a robust security appliance to keep people out. Okay, I got a firewall. Now, what kind of firewall do I need? If it's my cat Cindy's website, I'm going to stick AWS WAF on it. It's cheap as can be. Now I've got $1 billion in intellectual property. I'm going to call the security vendors like Cisco, Fortinet, Palo Alto, Checkpoint. I'm probably going to use 2 of them in the process because I have to adopt my business requirements to my technology needs.
Makes sense. Thanks for
and work backwards. Great question there, Alonzo.
Yeah.
All right. So I got a question now. So we're going off road here. We're not even changing directions. We're just going off road completely. All right. So I got 2 questions. I got a follow up to this one, but because we're talking so much about not focusing on the tech, but I want you to tell us, you have to know the tech.
Oh, yes.
So what does that look like for the cloud architect? What is
Good question.
'cause
Okay, I see what you're going.
This is
I don't want people to have the impression that they don't need to know the tech. There's a difference between knowing the tech and focusing on the tech. So let's talk about that for a second. Then I got a follow up to that. That will just continue pulling that thread. So what does it look like to know the tech from a cloud architect's perspective?
Yeah, now this is really deep. I'm going to start with a medical perspective to give you an example, and then I'm going to bring it to cloud architecture. Let's say you go to a doctor. The doctor needs to know how the heart functions, right? They need to know the left ventricle, the right ventricle, the left atrium, the right atrium. They need to know what the ascending and descending aorta do, what the subclavian does. They need to know how the pulmonary arteries take the information from the deoxygenated blood from the lungs into the heart, and how the pulmonary veins bring it in. Then they need to know how the blood flows through the body, because if you're going to give a drug, it's going to tune one of those systems, and you need to know how everything works. For the architect, it's equally important to understand all the parts of the system. How does the router work that's sending packets across subnets? How does the firewall work? How does the packet come into the firewall? What kind of filters are looking? How does the algorithm that says, okay, intrusion going on in a next generation firewall block it? It has to understand all of the networking protocols. And that means whether it be BGP or IP addressing, it's how the protocol works, not how to configure it. And that is the difference. It's how it works versus how to configure it. When I was a paramedic, and I'm using this for example, and then I'm going to bring it back, I thought I knew everything. Somebody complained about chest pain, and I had it down. I'd show up at their house, I'd stick an oxygen mask on them, I'd stick an IV in them, I'd draw some blood, I gave them a sublingual nitro tablet to open up the blood vessels, a couple of milligrams of morphine, I did an EKG and took them to the hospital. I was a hero, right? And it was easy because the duration of my work was 15 minutes. That's how long it took them to the hospital. I'm going to go to the internal medicine. I'm going to bring it back. Then on my first day in internal medicine, I had somebody that had a headache. Now, that doesn't sound like much, right? But did they have a brain tumor? Did they have hypertension? Were they having a stroke? Did they have a tension headache? Did they have a muscle spasm causing a headache? Did they have liver failure causing a headache? It could have been one of 1,000 things. And the duration of my care was no longer 10 minutes or 15 minutes like a paramedic. It was for the next 60 years of somebody's life. And the decisions that I made as a paramedic were based on how to. Where the decisions I made practicing internal medicine were on how the systems all work together. I need, as an architect, people to understand how the technology works and how it's applied together. I like to use this example. If any of you are familiar with Cisco routers, I can teach you as a network admin to type router OSPF1, network 192.168.1.0, 0.0.0.3, area 0. And I just put an interface in area 0. And I have people that do that all day long. And for everybody that does cloud projects, that's what they're doing. They're doing hands-on implementation. Now, you know what that didn't teach you? How OSPF works. How do the two routers in OSPF form a neighbor adjacency? What are the phases of adjacency, like init, extart, exchange, loading, full? How does OSPF make its routing decisions? Is it because the routers send a type 1 LSA related to all of their links in an area, a type 2 LSA generated by designated routers on a broadcast multi-access segment, a summary LSA, which is related to routing information in another area, an external LSA, which is a type 5 LSA, which comes from an autonomous system border router that redistributes the route into OSPF, and a type 4 LSA, which tells me how to reach that external domain. That knowledge that I just talked about now, that's what I need as an architect. It's the fundamental deep knowledge of how it works. And the only way you learn this is you learn the underlying technology. You learn the protocols. And we'll give you in that How to Get Your First Job, Cloud Architect Job Guide, a list of all those things. But you will never learn this by building it. Never. Because learning how to start an IV, which I can teach to you in 5 minutes, and any drug addict that shoots up heroin figured out how to do it, doesn't know how to be a doctor. They don't. So it's not the how-to that makes a doctor the doctor. It's to how to get the right information from the patient, how the systems of the body actually work, how medications affect the systems of the body, how to make the correct diagnosis, and how to prescribe the right treatment. It's the same thing for the architect. So for us, it's how each individual component works and how we put these technologies together to form a cohesive solution. That's the deep depth of the architecture knowledge. It's deep. And that's why when everybody's teaching a certification related to nothing, they can do it in 20 hours. And that's why we spend 500 to 700 hours by the time we get somebody hired as a cloud architect, because we have to teach the tech how it works, not how to build it. Completely different. The same way a building architect needs to know construction materials, and they need to know what the earth is like underneath it so the building doesn't sink, and they need to know ambient winds and how that affects it. That's what we need to know, not how to use the hammer.
You got called out for your use.
I have to put I have to put some money in the acronym swear jar.
Said, pay up.
Oh yeah, we're gonna actually. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm just gonna. I know there's ways that we can do this, but I want to see what everybody's thoughts are. I'm gonna do another poll.
Oh, I'm down for it already. I don't care what it is. I
Would
know
you
it's gonna
be offended if we had a donation option for swear jar every time.
Oh, Anakin said you've got the first donation coming, buddy.
Oh, I know I do. So I know we can use the donation function on YouTube. We've never used it, but you know we joked earlier in class about the acronym swear jar. But you know let us know if you would be offended if we use the donation function for an acronym swear jar on Head in the Clouds towards a scholarship for our programs or something like that. I don't know what it would look like. We're literally coming up with the idea right now. So I just wanted to get everybody's feedback. Let us know what you think about that. Would you be offended by that?
And it came up, this conversation came up in class. One of my students spewed out 10 acronyms. Nobody knew what they meant. And I said, if you use an acronym, we're going to have a swear jar and we're going to donate it to some form of charity. Because the key is you go in an architect interview and use a bunch of acronyms, you're escorted out the door. I didn't even know what LSA stood for. I had to think about it because I've learned it as LSAs. But yeah, that's the point. It's a link state advertisement.
Yeah, so let us know your thoughts about that, because you know it's not going to go to line our pockets. It's going to go to something else.
Yeah, it won't go for us.
So anyway, I just wanted to, and of course I've got the first donation because I did it earlier.
And I got to do one too.
I haven't done any yet, but I'll throw in just because my friends are doing it.
If I watched the recording, I'm sure you did.
Hey, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Exactly.
There you go.
All right. So my follow-up question to that, and I got a feeling we're going to end up going past my 2-hour my 2-hour New Year's resolution here. But so now that we've talked about what it looks like to know the tech for a cloud architect, what percent of the role of the cloud architect is not tech?
80%, 50 to 80%.
Why is that?
Yeah, I want to know, because I'm like, once we go up the echelon of solution, cloud, enterprise, those percentages continually increase or decrease depending on if you're looking at it from the tech or business side. So I want to hear about this.
So Chris is my chief operating officer. Chris, I'm going to take you off mute real quick. So Chris, and this is the first demo. And I'm intentionally, and sure I'll add to the swear jar later, I'm intentionally going to sound like an engineer. Chris, I got some block storage, object storage, file storage for you. I can handle your 6 petabytes of data. It's all kinds of exciting. Additionally, we can connect you to 3 internet service providers. We'll multi-home you. We'll set you up a BGP policy. What we'll do is we'll take in routes and we'll tag them with a community no export and we'll export them. And that way we don't become a transit AS. You interested in buying my $10 million of stuff?
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what it is.
The first part of it is I've got to find the business requirements from the executives. They're the people that are going to buy my stuff. That are the people that have a goal. They don't speak techie. So I have to speak to them. Now, I got a buddy, Billy Bob, actually. And Billy Bob likes to off-road truck. He likes to do all kinds of camping and fishing and all kinds of outdoor activities. If I communicate to Billy Bob the same way I communicate to the CEO who's a billionaire, it's not going to work. And likewise, if I communicate to the CEO the same way I did to Billy Bob, we got a problem. He's not Billy Bob, but it's a friend just like the Billy Bob. But so there's that. So first, I got to be able to understand and communicate to the executives. Next, I got somebody that says, Mike, I want to increase revenue. We're losing money. We got to become more operationally efficient. I'm like, okay. Now, what does that actually mean? Now, in a silly AWS certification, they tell you the shift to cloud computing is CapEx to OpEx. And I see everybody on LinkedIn that doesn't know business saying how great it is. That could be the worst thing for an organization's capital structure if you don't understand an organization's capital structure or their weighted average cost of capital. So I got to be able to look at how an organization gets technology and buys it and their capital structure to be able to say, you can buy this server from Dell for $300,000. AWS is going to charge $4 million over the next 4 years for these services. Given the level of sophistication you have in your people, I recommend that we use an OpenStack cloud for you and push your web stuff and your auto-scaling stuff to the AWS cloud and 50% to the Azure cloud. I've got to be able to do that. Now I got to go manage all the stakeholders. Stakeholder management is not going to be covered in your AWS certification. I promise you. To some degree, it'll be covered in an MBA program. We covered a lot in our training program, but you got to manage all these stakeholders. What do they want? Who's got what initiative? How do you keep these things? Now you got to go present at a conference because we do this all the time. You got to present to executives. And now you need presentation skills. Now, the average architect probably spends 4 hours a day facilitating meetings and leading meetings. Now you got to manage a meeting and you got to manage the babbler and the chatty Cathy and the Billy Bob all at the same time. We all have different goals, different initiatives. Billy Bob hates Sally, who hates Josie, who hates Tony. But they're all on your team and you got to make that work. So there's that. Now you need an architecture and you got to convince your company to give you 50 tech people that each cost $200,000 fully loaded salary for the next 12 months. Now that's $10 million of people you need. And you got to go justify that. Now you got to go do an executive briefing, which is a dog and pony show where you and key leaders come in and convince a customer and their executives why they should buy your stuff. Now you got to respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ and do it in a tactful manner. Now you finally agree on stuff and now you got to help negotiate a deal. You got to negotiate people working and you got to deal with everybody's initiatives. None of that's tech. That's 80% of what we do. Heck, entertaining clients. I had to take golf lessons to help my architect career at some point once I was an architect. You're going to the Super Bowl with box seat, with one of those boxes that you get that cost a fortune that you put on your corporate American Express card to entertain your clients. That's the job. I still don't understand football, but I've been to several Super Bowl events.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, hold on, Alonzo.
What's going on?
Did Alonzo use an acronym?
I didn't say it.
Oh, so now we're going with
I didn't
say an acronym.
say it.
Okay, so now it's say, not use. Okay, all right. Okay.
It's all in the language.
Yeah,
it's all in the language.
We will flesh out the language before we implement the swear jar. All right, sorry. I had to thank you, Igor, for pointing that out for me. Yes. So let's go with it. What do you have, Alonzo?
Okay, we've expounded a lot about TOGAF and enterprise and digital transformation and the percentage of what is technical within an architectural role space. So for our listeners, what is the biggest mistakes architects can make in their career?
It's one of two things. And I see two things which destroy architecture careers. The first one is lack of focus. And look, I was taking college electronics courses in high school. I loved electronics. And I had finished my college electronics work in the first quarter of my senior year in high school. So the professor said two things. One is you're going to help teach this class. And I learned a lot about becoming a teacher and communicating to others. And the other is he said, Mike, he said, the only challenge I see with you is you learn really fast, but you don't know what you want to become. He said, some days I hear you talking about becoming a Navy SEAL. He said, other days I hear you talking about becoming a doctor. And other days it's like, you don't know. So he was like, he actually showed me a laser. And he took the LED behind it, which was this little red light. And it was so minuscule. And he said, this laser can cut steel. And he said, here's this light bulb. It's got like 600 lumens in it. And what it lit the room. Here's this 50 lumen thing. And poof, it cuts steel. Focus, 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 focus. Be like the laser. When I heard that, it changed the trajectory of my life. The second side of it is, if 80% of this job is business, don't learn DevOps. It's not our job. Don't learn to code. It's not our job. Don't learn to be the maintenance person, which is sysops. Don't do it. Don't get 10 certifications, because when you put them on your resume, if I see more than 3 certifications on a resume, I won't even interview the person. I don't want to waste my time because I know their focus is on certifications, which don't teach how the underlying technology works, except for the CCDE and the CCIE. They teach how to configure the technology, which architects don't do. So the biggest mistake I see people make is they think being an architect is being an engineer, and they focus on engineering skills. Well, it comes down to this. If you're paid on how much you can sell, and there's a reason I'm going to give you this example. I'm going to take this Google Professional Cloud Architect job. Now, the pay average, this is from Glassdoor. It goes up and down. So it could be more or less than this right now, but it's a direct printout from Glassdoor. I like to print stuff out. The average salary was $508. At the low end, we seen $394, and at the high end, we see $677. Now, that's $300,000 almost, $275,000 to be more accurate, of difference between the highest and lowest paid person. If the person who's an architect focuses on selling more, they can add $200,000 on their business acumen. They can add $300,000 to their salary. If they focused on getting a ninth certification, there's no impact on their salary. So imagine a baseball pitcher, these guys that throw the ball, girls that throw the ball, they can't hit the ball, and nobody cares. Why does nobody care, and why are they often the most highly paid person on the team? Because it's really rare to find somebody that can throw a 97-mile-an-hour fastball and be accurate. You, as an architect, are a unicorn. Finding someone that understands how technology works is impossible. I can find you millions of people that know how to configure it in a moment's notice, but finding anybody that understands it is impossible. Why do you think 16% of all cloud hacking events occur because of misconfigured S3 buckets? Anybody can configure an S3 bucket. I taught an 8-year-old. They don't know what to do and the underlying tech and why it's insecure. That's the problem. So for architects, it is important to maintain our technical knowledge of how stuff works. But once you truly learn that, you truly learn that. You want to ask me how blood flows through the body that I learned 30 years ago? I can tell you, and I won't miss a step because it's part of me, it's true knowledge. I can also tell you that I've been an architect now for 25 years, and for the most part, nothing's changed. It all seems exciting. Yeah, we went from a frame relay cloud to an ATM cloud, to a BGP cloud, to a VPS cloud, to the private clouds and the public clouds that we have today. Same stuff, different name. So the key is if your fundamentals are good, but which do you focus on, your high value skills or your low value skills? The average salary of someone with business acumen, according to salary.com, is over $558,000 a year. So you're a cloud architect and the majority of your job is business acumen. Do you take a tech leadership course like ours or an MBA program and build your business acumen and add a couple $100,000 to your salary? Or do you focus on getting another certification in somebody else's career, like DevOps? If you're a DevOps engineer, sure, it's great to have a DevOps certification. Beautiful, it matches. But you're not going to see a doctor getting certified in DevOps. You're not going to see an airplane pilot getting certified in DevOps. And if an architect does it, it's just as bad and ridiculous as if a doctor got certified in DevOps, because it's not our jobs. And what I see is the certification game. Everybody finds it a competition. I'm 32X certified. Great. You're 32 X reasons why I would never hire you in my life, would never let you get in front of my customers. Because I know their focus is not transformation, not making their clients successful, but being a techie. Now, I might hire them to be an engineer, but never an architect.
It makes a lot of sense. And I often say this, especially if I'm talking with people or I'm in the LinkedIn community and oftentimes there was a certain company where we all were privy to a discussion, and you had to speak to an architect, and he was so adamant about architects coding, but it doesn't make sense, because if architects are supposed to code, then what are the cloud engineers supposed to do?
Or the developers.
Or the developers or the programmers. So they are always tongue-tied at that point, and I think it helps to dispel these inaccuracies.
Oh, wait. I remember this person. Their architects didn't code. He liked to hire architects that had a coding background.
Yes.
Was what it was.
Okay.
And I said, that's great. Now tell me how the coding helps with security. And he fell apart. Tell me how it helps with the virtualization.
He got pretty upset.
And he got pretty upset. Now that same person also tried to convince me that a single cloud is a great high availability solution. And I said to him, and it didn't work out well, I said, I suggest you learn networking and understand why you can't have a single cloud and a high availability solution.
All right. So it's time for us to start wrapping up. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I want to thank you for letting me give my little rant at the beginning about how much it upsets me that there's so much misinformation out there. Some of it purposefully, some of it not. But that's what we're here for. We want to try and help you with your goals, but we can only do that by knowing what your goals are. So thank you all for joining us. I do want to remind everybody of a few things. As you can see up here, we've got the free resource of why tech skills aren't enough. We've also got our free resource of how to get your first cloud architect job guide. And then, of course, I want to invite you to our webinar on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern to learn how to become the ultimate cloud architect. So we'll present about our program and our training, and then the rest of the time we'll take any of your questions, whether it's about our company and training or whether it's about your career path and your plans and your development. Maybe you're not even sure what path you want to go down yet, and you just have some questions. Make sure to register for that webinar. It's going to be on Zoom, so you can come off mute and ask us questions, and you don't have to just stick to 200 characters in the chat box there. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed all of your participation. Thank you for all of your feedback. It looks like the overwhelming majority of you would not be offended if we had a donation option for a swear jar. So we might incorporate that some shape or form. I'm not sure.
We'll give it some talk.
It's important to us not to use acronyms. So now we got to figure out what we mean by use. Do we mean use or do we mean say? As Alonzo likes to dance around the semantics there. So we'll have some fun with that. But thank you all. Alonzo, any last words? And then we'll let Mike share his last thoughts here.
Yeah, I love hanging out with. I mean, we have everyone from all over the world. They're getting up in the morning, haven't even started their day. They're going to bed, or maybe somewhere in between. I greatly appreciate you all taking the time to allow us to share our experiences, our acumen, skill set. Working with these gentlemen, it's never a dull day, and we always love to come together and just help you guys get on the path, finish, and ultimately get those cloud jobs. So we know you all can do it. We've got a lot of amazing things coming in the future, and just keep coming to Head in the Clouds. We're going to have amazing stuff in the future as well.
So I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd like to leave you with this. Almost every day one of my students gets hired, and I got to tell you, it's the highlight of my day and my life. Watching people go from here to here, changing their income, which changes their family, creating generational wealth, and helping people be happy in their jobs is my life's work and my dream. Look, I went to school for 7 years, studied internal medicine, and I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. And I went to tech, and I don't think I've ever worked a single day in my life. I've got paid to do the things that make me happy. And I want you all to have the absolute best career. So if I can leave you with this, and that's my cute cat in this right next to me. If I can leave you with this, find the career that you desire and really master that career. Look, I love the enterprise architect world, the cloud architect world, but whatever it is you choose, be the best you possibly can. Don't fritter away your energy and get a million certifications in unrelated careers. Focus on what you love. You want to be a Python developer? Fine, be the world's greatest Python developer, or at least the best of your abilities. The reality is people say don't compare yourself to others. I say that's nonsense. And here's the reason it's nonsense. When you go on an interview, somebody's going to compare you with somebody else. So I need you to be the best you can be. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be the same as somebody else. One person's got great relationship development skills. Somebody else is super emotionally intelligent. Somebody else communicates well. Take your own natural gifts and apply them to your career, because you're going to ultimately have to compete with someone else. And it doesn't have to be on one thing. There's multi-dimensions to us. So go find what you're good at and leverage that to go out there and win. And if you're an architect, a cloud architect or an enterprise architect, I want you to focus on architecture, which is helping organizations improve their business with performance. It's all about transforming those organizations. The tech is just a tool. It is no different than a hammer. I'm not going to build my life about a hammer. If I want to build a house, if I knew how to use a hammer, which I don't, I would use it to hammer in nails or whatever construction workers do with hammers. I don't know how to do any of that. The only thing I know is how to be a great architect, how to be a martial artist, and how to practice medicine. I don't know anything else because I'm a specialist in my career. And believe me, my career has rewarded me for being exceptionally good at only one or two things and not trying to be good at everything, because you can't. When you divide your focus, it all falls apart and you become a hobbyist. Nobody gets paid $500,000 a year as an architect because they're a hobbyist. They get paid because they're a professional. Every one of you, all of you, can have a $300,000, $400,000, or $500,000 architecture career if you desire to be architects and focus on it. And learn the right skills, develop the right business acumen, the right leadership skills, the right sales, all of it. Any one of you can be anything you want. The only thing that gets in our way are ourselves in most cases. You can do it. You can be great. Please come to the free webinar on Thursday. I look forward to meeting people, and I love meeting people. And I can see you on Zoom, and we can talk. Please download that free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job Guide. I want to be very clear with you. That's the list of everything that you need to know. Everything. And please read that article on why tech skills are not enough. You want to earn more in your tech career? It's in that document. You want to know why the engineers don't get hired as architects, even though they're the most technically competent people in the world? It's in that document. You want to know how to get a promotion? It's in that document, and they're all free. Everything I just described to you was free. So take advantage of these opportunities we gave to you, and I hope to meet some of you on Thursday. Have a great night.
And I would have let us end earlier, but Anna can ask the most appropriate question ever. Is it wrong to see all the tech as just tools to solve business problems? No, that is the 100% correct way to look at it.
Yeah,
that is what tech is.
Yeah,
tech
tech is just a toolbox for you to use, and you use that to build things. You use it to build a chair.
You use it to solve problems. Simple
exactly.
As that.
So that's exactly the perspective you need.
That is the correct perspective. Good question. I thought that was great. It came in at the last minute.
Excellent question.
Yep. Nice end. Yeah.
Yep. So thank you all. We will see y'all on Thursday. If you're a student, we'll see you in class. If you're not a student, join us for the webinar. It's all there in the chat box. Have a great evening, everybody.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone.
Take care, everyone.